They moved out of Kelowna, they moved over to Nakospi, bought a house in Nakospi, fixed it up, he didn't care for that. He bought another house in Nakospi, fixed it up, he didn't care for that. He moved over to outside of Nakospi, between Nakospi and Folkier, got himself a farm again and started farming. Last time he was in his 80s. When he came to us, he was in his 70s. He was 70, I think 74 or something like that. And he had basically given up on life. He was going to die. And then he carried on. Well, his son-in-law came to our place to visit his father-in-law. And his son-in-law, he was a very, very talented man. He knew how to fix, he knew how to hook up a well. Like he was from Alberta, and they were drilling oil wells, and they would have to take the piping from the oil well to the pump house, and he had the ability to be able to see exactly what that took to hook it up. And so he would be able to draw it on a thing, and he'd have the people go and buy the parts and install it. He had 5 installer trucks. And he said to me, I'm very, very successful except for one problem. I'm an alcoholic. And so he stayed with us, went home, and about 6 months later I got a drum that he sent me. And he said with it, I've quit drinking. And I just was so thrilled to hear, to see that man. He was such a success, and he was afraid he was going to lose his business, he was going to lose his family, lose everything. He sent me that drum, and he says, I'm free of it right now. Of course, alcohol can come back at any time, so you've got to stay free of it. Okay, well, this evening, what makes people sick? All right, what are some of the things that make people sick? So the relation that exists between the mind and the body is very intimate. When one is affected, the other sympathizes. The condition of the mind affects the health to a far greater degree than many realize. Many of the diseases from which men and women suffer are the result of mental depression. Grief, anxiety, discontent, remorse, guilt, all tend to break down the life forces and to invite decay and death. In my library at home, I have a picture of a hospital in Paris in the 1400s. And, when you look at the picture, you see 2 people in the same bed. Now, when you go to a hospital, it kind of bothers you when you have to share the room with another person. Maybe you have to even share it with 2 other people. But I doubt very many of you would go to a hospital where you had to share the bed with a person. You have to think of Paris. This is Paris. This is it's a big stone building. There's no central heating. It's the 1500s. And so if you went to the hospital, they put you in a bed with another person to stay warm. That's basically what it was. And if you came there with tuberculosis and they came there with yellow fever, the outcome was deadly. And in fact, it was when you went to the hospital in Paris in the 1500s, you said goodbye to your loved one when they went. The chances of them coming out was almost 0. Right? We didn't know what was making people sick. The hospital was decorated with all kinds of figurines to scare away whatever was going to make the people sick, whatever it was they were trying to scare away. We have a carryover that once a year, we get a thing we call what? What do you call the disease? Once a year it goes through. Flu. Which, if you give us the real word, what would it be? Influenza. If you translate that in English, what would it be? Influence. You caught the influence. If that thing was floating around and caught on you. That was where that word came from. The influence, right? Well, in the 1600s, a glass grinder in Holland. He was grinding glasses for people. I didn't know they did it that far back, but they did. And he was fooling around with the lenses, and he made a crude microscope. And he found out that if he scraped his teeth, and he found out that if he put it under that microscope, he would see things that were moving around. They were like alive. They had tails and fins and flippers, and wow. He didn't want to tell his patients or his clients that he had animals in his mouth. I mean, they were alive. He called them amicals. I mean, it wouldn't be good for business if a person came and said, I got animals in my mouth, So that was when we first saw bacteria, because he made, 1840, Robert Koch, he isolated anthrax bacteria. He brought in sheep, right in, supposing this is a school of, the medical directors. He brought them in before the medical directors. He took sheep in and he had it injected into them. anthrax, and the sheep fell over and dropped dead, killed them. He says it's anthrax that is killing our sheep, and how could it be something that you could hardly see? I mean, how could it be that it's killing the sheep? And so he had anthrax in his home, and he had doctors that would come by and he would explain to them, this is what's killing me. We've isolated anthrax. We can actually. Well, you wouldn't want to live with him because he had it in the window. Went off to town, he came back. And some doctors came by and he wanted to show them, and he took some of that anthrax and he injected it to sheep, and they didn't die. And that, he's a scientist. I mean, if it kills sheep, it's got to kill sheep. So he went and got some that he knew had killed sheep, and he brought that out, and he took it and injected it in the same sheep, and they still didn't die. Now he had a real problem. And the problem was that he had discovered what? That when you take anthrax and put it in the window in the sunlight, it kills it. And when you inject attenuated anthrax, dead anthrax, into a sheep, that sheep develops antibodies to that attenuated dead anthrax. And then when you put the real thing in there, he's protected. He developed a vaccine. He had vaccines. And so him and Louis Pasteur, you remember what was Louis Pasteur famous for? Anybody know? What was it?
Penicillin.
He saved the wine industry in France when the wine got to the degree of wininess that they wanted. He heated it up and stopped it from getting turning to vinegar, and so they called it pasteurizing. He pasteurized the wine. So Louis Pasteur, the chemist, and Robert Koch, the doctor, they made vaccines for. Well, we know for sure they did it for rabies. They did it for anthrax. They did it for other things. They were making vaccines. So we had in 1840, we had the germ theory. So now we know why people get sick. And if you went to the doctor and you were sick, what would he do? Take your blood? Take it to a lab? What's in it? What's causing? What's making this guy? Why is he sick? Well, there's another guy. He's a Canadian. Fortunately, he came from Europe, but he became a Canadian, so we can claim he was a Canadian. He came along and he went, it's true that when you get the flu, you get sick. But how come you take some people that are really, really sick and you take their blood out of them and you look at it and they have hardly any flu virus, and you have another person that's not sick at all and they're loaded with flu virus? Now, how come that is? I mean, what's causing that? Why is one person get really sick with the flu, and another person just seems to pass right by, hardly even notice it? He says, I think it has to do with something else. He says, I think it has to do with stress. And so what he did is he put animals in cages and he stressed. How would you stress an animal? Too many in one cage, right? Have you ever been to Disneyland? It's fun. First day, second day, it's not too bad. But after a while, it's like there's just too many people. I wish I want to get out of here. It's too. When you get crowded, they put too many animals in one cage. Bright lights, loud noises. He stressed them. He got them all stressed. And he started noticing they had physical changes. It started taking. Their blood became stickier. They lost weight. They lost hair. They had all kinds of illnesses started taking place just from having too many in one cage. Stress, right? Stress. He did find out they had four actual things. So one thing is their stomach was inflamed. Another thing that happened is the lymph nodes disappeared, lymph vessels disappeared, their adrenals enlarged. Do you remember the first time you got stressed? Can you probably don't remember, but I can remind you of one of the times you got stressed. All of us in this room, I'm almost sure, had a teacher that said they had a basket with little topics in it, and they passed it around, and then when you pulled out the topic, you had to talk in front of your classmates for 2 minutes on something. We called it an impromptu speech, right? And you didn't know, you hadn't prepared for it, you didn't know anything about it, you had to stand in front of your classmates and make an absolute fool of yourself, and you turned to the person beside you and you said, I got butterflies in my elbow. Where was the butterflies? I got butterflies in my stomach, right? Stress hits you right in the stomach. We can remember that time we got stressed, right? So what can we do about stress? What can't we? That's one of the problems. Guests come to our guest houses. They're stressed. They're busy. They're doing this and that and the other, and they just can't. What can you do about stress? Help me out. Anybody? Okay, here we go. Laura G has been feeling depressed, lonely, and blah, so a psychiatrist suggested she try the antidepressant Prozac. After months of sessions and no luck with the wonder drug, she turned to another psychotherapist off the oxybutynin. Therapy sessions were scheduled for sunrise. Almost miraculously, Laura's moods brightened. Her lethargy went away. What caused Laura to feel so much better? The catalyst wasn't talking about her childhood or a drug. The cure was, help me out, anybody? What was it? Sunshine? Oh, that's good. Okay, that's excellent, but that's not the one I was thinking about.
Deep breathing.
Oh, good. We're going to get to that. That's not the one
deep
I was thinking about.
Meditation.
What's that?
Meditation.
Meditation. Well, that could be, but that wasn't the one I was thinking about.
Exercise.
What was it?
Exercise.
Walking, yeah. So Keith Joskar, clinical psychologist at San Jose University, wrote this. He called it the exercise prescription for depression and anxiety. According to Joskar, exercise is a mind-altering technique that brings about changes, sometimes for days at a time. He put laboratory rats and animals in cages, and he exercised them. And guess what he found out? They produce more dopamine, more norepinephrine, and more serotonin, the exact neurotransmitters that your brain needs when you're anxious or you're stressed. The very things you need, they produce more of those. There's only one problem, guess what? If you're a human being, it takes 3 to 5 weeks of regular exercise to produce enough neurotransmitters to lift the clinical depression.
3 to 5
Lift that
weeks.
stress. It takes 3 to 5 weeks of regular exercise. Now you know why we have people come and spend a couple weeks with us. We get them started. We get them out walking every day, so that we can actually help them to begin to handle one of the biggest problems that we have in our society, which is stress. It's just so much stress, right? And so this might help people if you're not exercising. Have you ever gone from one room into another, and you get to that room and you can't remember why you went there? You done that? Of course. All right, we do that. Now we do it once in a while. And we start making a habit of doing that. You know what you need to do? You need to get on a walking program. I guarantee you, you need to get on a walking program because that's a sure sign that you've got too much stress going on. Are you with me? You really need to get on a walking program. If you're not, I would really encourage you to start walking. 3 40-minute walks a week minimum. 3 40-minute walks. How many? You know, I got people who tell me, you know, we got a problem with our healthcare system. Isn't that right? You got a terrible problem. You got to, if you want to see a doctor, you have to go to the emergency. Almost. You almost have to go to the emergency, and then you have to wait there until 3 people have passed out, and then you can get a check. I mean, it's really, you know, we got a problem with our healthcare system.
Climbing stairs is
You know something though? If you ask Canadians, how many of them are on a walking program? What do you think the percentage is that are doing it every day, or 3 times a week, or 4 times a week? What do you think the percentage is? Less than 40% of Canadians are doing that, looking after themselves, doing their physical exercise. You see what I'm saying? We have a healthcare problem. It's not the hospital, it's us. Are you with me? We're not taking care of ourselves. We need to get into it. That's what we do with our guests. You'd be surprised. We just had, how many nurses were there? 14. We had 14 nurses just came to our place for just spent a whole week with us. We took them out every day walking twice a day. 14 nurses. All came at the same time. They were originally part of a class. And they came and that's what we did. We took them out walking twice a day. And I tell people, if you aren't on a walking program, that's fun, that's basic. Walking in all cases where possible is the best remedy for diseased bodies. Right? The best. Right? All right, well, there's a problem.
Survey.
We have people that come, I can't walk. Why? Well, I got a sore knee. Okay? So we have many people that come to us with a sore knee. This is what we call a heating compress. Have you seen this before? All right, so this, what it is simply, we have a piece of cotton cloth. And this is easy to make, because all you have to do is take a piece of sheet, that's the thickness you want. That's your cotton cloth, right? Okay. You dip that in cold water, and you're going to put that on the person's leg. I'll do it over here, so you can see how I can do it, okay? So that now, when you want to do this is just before you go to sleep at night. You've done everything. You put the canary in the cage, you've let the cat out, you've done everything you need to do. you're sitting on the edge of your bed, you've gone to the bathroom, you want to do this after, you want to do this after you've gone to the bathroom, you're sitting on the edge of your bed, your leg is out, you don't have your pant on like this, but I'm not going to take it off. Here we go. So you're going to wrap it cold and wet around the knee. And you wrap it just like the putty, all right? There you go. Okay. Where did I put the rest of it though? On the table? Yeah, there we go. All right. The next thing you have is a piece of wool. If your skin is sensitive to wool, you can use a different, but you use a piece of wool like that, and you're going to do the same thing. What you want to do with the wool is you want to make sure you cover the margins of the cotton so that there isn't any sticking out from under it, because it's going to be cold and wet, and if you have a cold and wet spot, without covering it, it will tend to evaporate, which will keep it cool. But you really want this, it's called a heating compress, so it's going to heat up, all right? Here we go, we got it. Wrap it around the leg like that, and then you're going to take a tensor bandage. Now with a tensor bandage, you have to be careful that you don't pull it too tight, because you don't want it to cut the circulation off, you just want it to hold the bandage, the wool in place, right? So you're going to wrap it around there like this. There you go. You know, the knee is one of the most commonly injured joints in the body. You know why? Because it's the most flexible joint you have. It moves back and forth this way and back and forth this way. Back, it goes both ways, so it articulates both ways. Many, many people come to us that have had knee injury when they were younger, played soccer, played football, did some kind of sport. They ended up with injuring their knee and they've suffered with it. And then I give them the heating compress. Now I've had many, many people that have come to the guest house with 2 sore knees, but I only give them 1. You know why? Because within 2 days they'll ask me for the other one, because it's working. So you say, I want to make sure, I want them to know it. If you give them both, but if you put on 1, you'll find out, yes, it's working. So just a heating compress on the knee at night. Go to bed at night. In a couple of days, you'll start noticing there's less pain, less suffering from it, and then the person, if we can, what our objective is, of course, is to try and get them walking again. That's the real objective. Okay, so another problem that people have is breathing, and that's what we're going to deal with right now. I had a gentleman, I'll tell you 2 stories, and I'm going to actually we'll show you what we do with this. So, we had a fellow that came, and he was coughing, badly coughing. And I put him in a room, or the person that assigned him a room. And he came to me and he said, don't put me in that room. He says, I have people on both sides of me. He says, I'll keep both of them up all night long. I cough all night long. So I said, we put him in a corner room, and then we did what we call fomentations, and I'm going to show you how you do that. We did hot and cold fomentations on him.